This evening, I want to talk about the second case from the Mumonkan. We don't do that many koan readings, and what's important to remember with any koan is that this is not an abstract study. It's only interesting, it's only pointful, and it's only insight if this koan turns out to be my life, our life, our collective life. And at a time when the world is in a state of war, we ask, what's the insight of this koan to do with my life? What's the insight of this koan to do with our current state of war? So, Mumonkan, case 2. Hyakujo's fox. Once, when Hyakujo delivered some Zen lectures, an old man attended them, unseen by the monks. At the end of each talk, when the monks left, so did he. But one day he remained after they'd gone, and Hyakujo asked him, "Who are you?" The old man replied, I am not a human being, but I was a human being when the Kashyapa Buddha preached in this world. I was a Zen master and I lived on this mountain. At that time, one of my students asked me whether or not the enlightened man is subject to the laws of causation. I answered him, the enlightened man is not subject to the laws of causation. For this answer evidencing a clinging to absoluteness, I became a fox for 500 rebirths, and I am still a fox. Will you save me from this condition with your Zen words and let me get out of a fox's body? Now, may I ask you, is the enlightened man subject to the law of causation? Hyakujo said, the enlightened man is one with the law of causation. At the words of Hyakujo, the old man was enlightened. I am emancipated, he said, paying homage with a deep bow. I am no more a fox, but I have to leave my body and my dwelling place behind this mountain. Please perform my funeral as a monk. Then he disappeared. The next day, Hyakujo gave an order through the chief monk to prepare to attend the funeral of a monk. No one was sick in the infirmary, wondered the monks. What does our teacher mean? After dinner, Hyakujo led the monks out and around the mountain. In a cave with his staff, he poked out the corpse of an old fox and then performed the ceremony of cremation. That evening, Hyakujo gave a talk to the monks and told them this story about the laws of causation. Obaku, upon hearing the story, asked Hyakujo, I understand that a long time ago, because a certain person gave a wrong Zen answer, he became a fox for 500 rebirths. Now I want to ask, if some modern master is asked many questions and he always gives the right answer, what will become of him? Hyakujo said, you come near me and I will tell you. Obaku went near Hyakujo and slapped the teacher's face with his hand, for he knew this was the answer his teacher intended to give him. Hyakujo clapped his hands and laughed at this discernment. I thought a Persian had a red beard, he said, and now I know a Persian who has a red beard. Perfectly clear? What? What's it useful to know before we start even beginning to think about that? Mumonkan's probably the most famous collection of Zen koans. This is the translation in Zen Flesh, Zen Bones, one of the most famous Zen books of all time. It's only 50 koans long as opposed to the 100 which most of them are, and the commentaries are shorter too. probably one of the reasons why it's retained its popularity. 50 koans. Most of them are incredibly short. This one's incredibly long. In fact, it's the longest koan, just in length, in the book. It may even be the longest koan in any of the collections. I didn't check the others, but it's really long. It's a story. And you probably work out it's got 3 separate elements to it. So we're actually telling a story. We've got a narrative. I mean, there's a lot going on here. There's the encounter with the fox Zen master. There's the story of the cremation. Then there's the encounter between Hyakujo and Obaku. What's the relationship between them? What's the significance? What's actually going on here? Clearly, we're talking about karma, which is being translated here as cause and effect. And in a minute, I'll read you a different translation, which feels different, has a different kind of resonance. But karma, cause and effect, yeah, we'll go with that. Might be tempting to think, oh, well, the fox abbot is being punished. He said the wrong thing. And in actual fact, there's quite a few of the sutras. You read, oh yes, as a teacher, you're in desperate trouble if you misrepresent the Dharma. You'll suffer unbelievable torment as a consequence. Terrified me? But the point is, as we come back to time and again, that's not how karma works. There's no sense of punishment. There's not even any actual sense of right and wrong, merely cause and effect. So clearly there's dangerous advice here, and presumably wider harm has come of it. But what's it really about? Is it really about saying, oh no, karma doesn't apply when you're enlightened? Oh, dun dun dun, lightning, clouds roll. Good story, but not so much. So what's the point? Well, all koans, to an extent, are about non-separation, emptiness. We can come at it from either end. And so you can look for the separation within the koan, but you can also see how the koan itself is non-separate with everything else. And when I say this koan is my life, that's non-separation. How do we find the non-separation there? But also within the Mumonkan. And in actual fact, the important thing here, and the key to the whole koan, is actually its relationship with the first koan in the book. It's number 2. Case number 1 is the famous Joshu's dog. Actually, I will read you both versions of this now, because you can see how different the translation is. And the problem with all koans is they're 8 times over a koan, because the translations are always problematic. Apart from translating something that was written a version of a version of a version of something which may or may not have happened 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 years ago, there's just, when you try and put it into English, what do you say? Depends on your understanding. We're not talking right, we're not talking wrong, but we are talking complicated, sometimes problematic. So, case 1, Joshu's dog. A monk asked Joshu, a Chinese Zen master, has a dog Buddha or nature or not? Joshu answered, Mu. Mu is the negative symbol in Chinese, meaning no thing or nay. We generally think of this as no, not. Does a dog have Buddha nature? Not. Well, just read you. This is from David Hinton's No Gate Gateway. He's much more interested in the Chinese version of the Wu Men Koan, which is the Mumonkan, the original one. Same thing, different. Now again, he has his own take, he has his own spin. It's actually, in some ways, I think, a more Taoist understanding than a Buddhist one of Zen. But his is the English translations of the Chinese names, because all of these names, the weird Japanese names, are Japanese transliterations of Chinese names which are intensely meaningful. So Joshu is actually visitation land. A monk asked Master Visitation Land, "A dog too has Buddha nature, no?" Absence Land replied. Same koan, different translation. So what do we get from that? Case 2 tells us this complex story about karma and causation. Case 1 just slap in the face. Well, not a Baku slap in the face, but it's effectively a slap in her face. No. What's he mean? No, or not, or nay. If I were going to translate, I'd probably just say wrong, as in wrong. Does that mean you're asking the wrong question? Does that mean you're coming at it in the wrong way, from the wrong direction? Does that mean a dog has no Buddha nature? Wrong. Or duh, maybe. Moo, not. So we're asking about the relationship of case 1 with case 2. One gives us so much, but it baffles, and the other gives us nothing, and it baffles. And in a way, the whole point of the koan is that this mu, this not, this absence, is the answer. It has to be the answer, but not in the way that we expect, not in the way of meaning. Because in this sense, in one sense, does a dog have Buddha nature? Irrelevant, beside the point. And yet, at another, this not is the expression of that Buddha nature, as everything is. In a way, this not is very useful, because you try and think your way through the koan, you try and think your way into the koan, and whatever you come up with, the answer is not, it's not that. We say there are 84,000 doors, Dharma doors. So there must be 84,000 ways to enter this koan. And actually that's just a conventional number. It could be 84 gazillion. Everything is a Dharma door. Every moment is a Dharma door. Every experience is a Dharma door. Even every thought is a Dharma door. I am a Dharma door. I have to be. My own experience. Not is the answer to this koan. I am the answer to this koan. Or rather, the meaning is not separate from me. The meaning is not separate from not. So the aim is to be blocked. The aim is to be blocked at every turn and sit and sit and sit. And Wumen talks about, feels like you're sitting with a red-hot iron ball in your throat. You can't swallow it, you can't spit it out. What are you going to do? And this is the classic, kind of heat the pot until it explodes version of Zen. It's not our version of Zen, actually. We don't do that. We don't try and wind the pressure up until we explode. We slow cook. We cook gently. But this is the way, and this is one way of approaching Zen, and this is the point of studying koans as a curriculum. And this is the beginning. This is the first koan. And what? So you sit and you sit and you sit, and eventually something happens, or it doesn't. And perhaps the something that happens gives you the sense that I see reality now as it truly is. I see that I am one with everything. There is no separation between me and anything in the universe. Reality equals one. Or perhaps I now see truly into emptiness. I see that nothing is really real. I and all other things lack any substance. Reality equals zero. One or zero. But either way, I see, I experience, I am special. Either way, I now act in harmony with all beings and all things. How could I create bad karma? How could I be subject to the laws of causation? This is clearly madness. And you don't inevitably find yourself in this state. Otherwise, nobody would sit koans. And equally, our slow cooker way, you can still end up in the same place. It's not about that. But it's predictable that of some aspect of this, you will end up in that place. And it's a problem. It's a huge problem. And in fact, so many of the koans are about after you've found this marvellous place, one or zero, how do you move from there? Liken it to the top, being sat on top of a 100-foot pole. Feels great, feels like I'm there, feels like I've done it, but where do you go from here? And even many really, in some ways, fantastic teachers find that the way that they go from here is to go through the world causing great harm as a result of feeling that they can create no bad karma. Everything they do is enlightened action from now on. It doesn't have to be that way, but there's the tendency. The kind of experience generates this response. And so how natural that Mumonkan should bring us case 2, which is in some sense the corrective. And again, though, here it's more subtle than maybe we think, because presumably the fox has had experiences very much like this. Presumably, he hasn't just read in the sutras that, yes, after enlightenment, causality does not apply. You can't generate karma. Although some of them do say that. And about 3 months after I became a Buddhist chaplain many years ago, somebody in the prison asked me, I've heard that it's true in meditation one creates no karma. Tell me about this again. Well, really genuinely didn't know what to say. So we have these ideas, and of course that idea is a bit like, does the dog have Buddha nature? Well, in a sense, so what? Who's asking? What are you going to do with it? What do you think yes would mean? What do you think no would mean? How is this your life? How is the answer to this question your life? So we assume that we'll call him the first abbot. He's a Zen master by his own description. We assume he's abbot at the monastery there. Many eons ago, in the time of Kashyapa Buddhas. This is one of the pre-Buddha Buddhas that Zen loved to figure with. Again, it's a conventional way of saying an impossibly long time ago. A time ago so far away. And he spent 500 lives as a fox. We assume he'd had one, perhaps many of those kind of experiences. No. I am now, to all intents and purposes, enlightened. I create no karma. I'm not bound by the laws of cause and effect. Does the monk who's asking the question, has he had many experiences like this and wants confirmation? Or is it, oh wow, if only I could have an experience like that and not be bound by the laws of karma anymore? either way, it's problematic. It's delusion. And delusion leads inevitably to suffering. In this case, experiencing the 500 lives as a fox as suffering. As being condemned to the animal realm. Again, no sense of punishment, no sense of judgment. This is just causality. You say you're not bound up in cause and effect. You say you're not bound up in karma. What happens? You find yourself as a fox. You find yourself as an animal. And fox in both Chinese and Japanese mythology is a very interesting animal. There are so many stories about fox spirits. It's a kind of animal that, is bound by the laws of causation and karma, but wants that kind of human dimension of possibility, the possibility of something more, something beyond. And so in that sense, the story is, would make perfect sense to somebody who knew all these folk stories. So you're really being tied tightly to cause and effect, because the animal as such really has no opportunity of operating differently within karma, that our intention, our consciousness, our ability to think, our ability to work with our feelings rather than simply follow them or be bound by them, in Buddhist thought gives us. Again, there's whole interesting arguments to be had about, is this the same with all animals? Is this distinction between animal and human in this sense sustainable or meaningful? What's it do? That's somewhere we're not going today, but it's a conversation which could and probably should be had. So in that sense, the fox as an animal is twisted into karma. And yet, of course, we're all animals. We're all embodied. We all have physical abilities, limitations. We're all going to die. We're mortal. We're absolutely animals. We're all foxes. Every one of us. But we have intention, we have aspiration, we have the ability to think, we have empathy, both as individuals and collectively. And of course our understanding is that whether we think we're enlightened or not, we are twisted into karma, not in the sense of being bound by it like the fibres of a rope, but just of working with it. I mean, Dogen has this lovely image of twining vines. Normally that's an image within Zen of being bound, but actually vines dancing around each other. We work in relation. We work within the possible. We work within the limitations that our embodiment offers us. We're not separate from our karma. Karma isn't a weight imposed on us from outside. In one sense, it's simply what we are as individuals, as our collective history. And the interesting thing about looking at history is, of course, the study of cause and effect. How we think cause and effect actually operates, not at some amazingly general sense, but in the concrete specifics of my life, of our world. So what's the meaning of the final episode of the story? Obaku asking about what happens if you give the right answer? And of course the answer here is, well, there's no right and wrong answers. There's cause and effect, and the outcome would be different if you gave different answers. We don't know. Depends on who's asking the question. But the result here is And again, this is something which crops up in a lot of koans. Maybe not as many as might be nice, but this sense of play, this sense of exchange, this sense of, no, there is no fixed outcome here. It's not a question of, well, I'll tell you the truth, I'll tell you how it is. And it's not simply a question of master and student. What we have here is play. Actually exactly like these vines twining round each other, Hyakujo and Ubaku. Hey, teach. What happens if you always give the right answer? Where do you end up? Come here and I'll show you. It's play. The teacher takes the role of the master. The master acknowledges the student. Play, openness, possibility, not fixed. Subject to causation, subject working within our karma, no blank slate, no clean pages, but equally not bound, open, possible, free. Free in that sense. Not bound like a rope, but not free as in I can do anything. Not free as in I can drop bombs on Iran, look how clever I am. And exactly what I want to will happen. Wrong. Wrong. Absolutely. Much happens. You don't know. The world is open. There are other beings out there. They will have their responses. You bring your karma, your history. You bring your karma as a person. You bring your karma as a nation. We mix that with the history, the karma of all the other people, individuals, nations, flora, fauna involved, and who knows? Because although we are all subject to the laws of cause and effect, who knows what's going to happen, because we are not bound, not free in our open, possible world. So I ask you, how are you, this koan? How are you not separate from Hyakujo and the fox? Or for that matter, from Joshu and the dog's Buddha nature? Let's sit.